All right, you guys, we're going to go over the odds of the Trig 7B review. And if you remember, this whole thing is all about SOHCAHTOA. So I have for this written, sine is equal to opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is equal to opposite over adjacent. Now, if we look at number 1, you have two variables to solve for, but only one angle to reference. 36 degrees is the only angle you can reference because remember, you can never use the right angle because you'll always get 0 or something that doesn't work in your calculator. So 36, the first thing you want to do is label the sides of your triangle. So if I cover up 36, the only side that I'm not touching is 9. That would be considered the opposite side. And then remember, the hypotenuse is always the longest side of the triangle that is across from the 90-degree angle. And the leftover side is going to be my adjacent side. I can't relate x and y together because you have two variables in one equation. It's impossible to solve for one without the other. So we have to relate it to 9. Let's say we're finding x first. This means 9 and x are my O and A sides. So I look in SOHCAHTOA and decide which one uses only O and A, which would be the tangent function. So I'm going to write tangent of my angle, 36 degrees, is equal to, follow the order, O over A, which would be 9 over x in our problem. Since x is being divided by, we're going to say that the way I type it in the calculator is to divide my two numbers. This is when you flip-flop x and tangent. So this will be, instead of 9 divided by x, it'll be 9 divided by tangent 36. So remember, when you type this in the calculator, you'll always want to check the mode. So remember, the button next to second is mode. You'll scroll down and look and see that degree is actually highlighted, and it is on mine. If it's not on yours, go over to degree so that it's flashing, hit enter, and then quit out of it. So now you're ready to type in 9 divided by tangent 36 gives us 12.38. Now the directions say round side lengths to the nearest tenth and angles to the nearest degree. Since x is outside of the circle, it is a segment or side length, so I need to round this to the nearest tenth. So that tells me to look at the 3 in the tenth spot, and the number behind it will either keep the 3 or bump it up to a 4. Since this is higher than 5, it's going to change that to 12.4. So x is 12.4, and it does not get degrees because it's not an angle. So now we'll do the same thing, come up with an equation for y. Let's continue to use 9 because that's solid information they gave us. If I accidentally solved wrong for x and I use it to find y, a wrong answer solving to find another answer is definitely going to be wrong. So you always want to use stuff that's given to you. So this time we're going to relate 9 and y, which is opposite and hypotenuse. Opposite and hypotenuse is together in sine, so we're going to write a sine function. Sine of my angle 36 equals O over h, which would be 9 divided by y. Again, we're dividing by the variable, so we're going to flip-flop the spot of y in my function. So now it's 9 divided by sine 36 degrees. So when I type 9 divided by sine 36 in the calculator, you end up getting 15.31, which the 1 keeps the 3 at the same spot, so it would be 15.3. All right, looking at number 3, we have another right triangle. We're looking for two side lengths, so I'm going to round both my answers to the nearest tenth, and the only angle I can reference is 43 degrees. So I cover up 43. The 90 would be considered my opposite side. Y is the longest side, so that's going to be the hypotenuse, and the leftover is going to be the adjacent. So let's say we're finding x first. I have 90 and x, which would be O and A. That tells me to use TOA. So I'm going to say tangent of my angle, 43 degrees, equals O over A, which would be 90 over x. Again, we're dividing by x here, so you're going to flip-flop x and tangent, and instead of 90 divided by x, you'll do 90 divided by tan 43. That comes out to 96.51, since we're rounding to the nearest tenth. That's going to give me a 96.5. No degree symbol because it's not an angle. Now let's do the same for y. Y is on the hypotenuse side. I'm going to still use 90 because that's the number they gave us. So we have O and H. O and H is with sine. So I'm going to say sine of my angle 43 equals O over H, which would be 90 over y. Again, y is on the bottom, so we're going to flip-flop and do 90 divided by sine 43. 90 divided by sine 43 comes out to 131.96. Okay, so when I look at the 6, it's going to bump this 9 up to a 10, which changes this to 132. Okay, so let's look at number 5. Number 5, we have 2 angles that we're looking for and 3 choices of sides. The good thing about this one is that you could choose any function because either way you relate, you have 2 of those sides given to you. So really it's just a point of preference. I'm going to find x first because that's what they're asking me to find. And I always kind of do first variable first, then my second variable next. So I'm going to reference x first for my labeling, which means 7 is going to be opposite, 25 is hypotenuse, and 24 would be adjacent. Let's just say I choose to do A and H, which would be adjacent over hypotenuse. According to SOHCAHTOA, adjacent and hypotenuse is together in cosine. So I'm going to write cosine of my angle is x, that's why I've circled it, is equal to A over H, which would be 24 over 25. This is an inverse problem. This is when you need to cancel out cosine to get x by itself. So the calculator part that you're going to type in is second cosine. You want to get rid of cosine and then type in the fraction that they gave us. So I'm going to type this in. It'll be second cosine 24 divided by 25. Enter. Because x is an angle directions say to round to the nearest degree, which is a whole number. 16.2 rounded to the nearest whole number is just 16 degrees. Once you've found one angle, you are more than welcome to do SOHCAHTOA again and find it in relation to y. But once you've already got 2 angles inside of a triangle, all 3 of them should add to 180. So if I do 90 plus 16, 90 plus 16 is 106. These total 106. I want to figure out what's left for y. So I'm going to take 106 out of 180, which leaves us 74 degrees for y. So I didn't even have to use trig for this one. I could just solve it by what I know about triangles. All right, number 7 is a very similar problem. We're looking for the 2 angles again. So we have x and y, and we have all 3 sides. So again, you can choose any 3 sides that you want. Let's say we look for x again, because I like to find x first. If I label my triangle in relation to x, 12 is opposite, 13 is hypotenuse, and 5 is adjacent. So this time, let's say I use O and A, just because I randomly chose it, but you could have done any combination. O and A is together in TOA. So I'm going to use tangent. So tangent of my angle that I circled is x equals O over A would be 12 over 5. So to cancel this out, you're going to have to negate or do the opposite of tangent, which is second tan of the fraction that we have, which would be 12 over 5. So when I type that in, second tan of 12 over 5 becomes 67.38, rounded to the nearest whole number because this is a degree, comes to 67 degrees. Now again, you can use the shortcut to find y. 90 plus 67 give us 157, and subtract that from 180. 180 minus 157 gives us 23 degrees for y. And remember, a quick check, these 2 that you get for your answer should add to 90 degrees because you already have a 90 degrees in there. All right, number 9. Number 9 is looking for two sides. And again, the only angle I'm given is 28 degrees. You never want to use the 90-degree angle. So I'm going to label in reference to 28. X would be opposite, 19 would be hypotenuse, and Y would be adjacent. Again, we're not going to relate X and Y together, so let's relate X to 19 first. X and 19 are O and H. The part of SOHCAHTOA that has OH is sine. So sine of 28 degrees equals O over H, which is X over 19. Since X is on top, I can cancel this X out. So I cancel out the 19 by multiplying. So 19 times sine of 28 is going to give me my answer. Because X is a side and so is Y, we're going to round these to the nearest tenth. 8.91, the 1 keeps the 9 in its spot, so this would become 8.9. Now let's solve for Y. Y is the adjacent side. I'm still going to relate to 19, so I have A and H. In SOHCAHTOA, that's the cosine part, so cosine of 28 degrees equals A over H, which is Y over 19. Y is on top, which means I'm going to multiply to find my answer. So 19 cosine 28 degrees comes out to 16.77. And I'll scoot over so you can see that. 16.77. The second 7 changes the first one up. So because I'm rounding to the nearest tenth, the 7 behind it is going to change this to 16.8. So I'm going to write 16.8. All right, number 11. Number 11, we have a 58-degree angle. I'm going to label my triangle, cover at 58. That gives me my opposite side. We have hypotenuse and then adjacent. To find X, I have to relate to 4, not Y. So we have O and H, which tells me to use the sine function. Sine of 58 degrees equals O over H, which would be 4 over X. X is on bottom, it's being divided by, so that's going to tell me to flip-flop X and sine and do 4 divided by sine 58. 4 divided by sine 58 gives me 4.7. And again, we're rounding to the nearest tenth because this is a side of the triangle like the directions said. Excuse me. Now let's find Y. We're still going to relate to 4, so this time we have O and A. SOHCAHTOA tells us to use tangent, and so tangent of 58 equals O over A, which is 4 over X. Since you're dividing by X, we're going to switch X and tangent and do 4 divided by tangent 58 degrees. 4 divided by tangent 58 gives us the value of 2.5 rounded to the nearest tenth, because it's 2.49.